Hello!
Hi, friends. I was not prepared.
Just giving a little Mrs. Doubtfire today is what I was aiming for, but I don't think I quite accomplished that.
I wasn't ready. Oh.
So, how's it going?
How's your week going, friends?
For us, it's the same week as it was last week.
I hope everybody's having a great week. I really hope that I did a weekly check-in on TikTok this week that you're listening to this episode.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get better. I'm gonna try and take a more active role on the socials and see what we can do with it.
Yeah, and I'm gonna try and be better about posting. Sometimes I just forget.
You know, busy.
I'll make Word documents with what I want the Facebook post to look like, and then I'll get pictures, and then I just don't do it. I set myself up for success, but then I self-sabotage.
Well, update, Brittany tried apple cider.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
It's not the best apple cider I've ever had, but we may take a field trip to go get the better brand. Maybe. But yeah. So,
What we got this week? Tell them.
we're continuing spooky seasons. The spooktacular.
Spooktacular.
And we're going to talk to you guys about some haunted mental institutions.
What did I call it?
What did you call it?
The most haunted hospitals and asylums in the U.S.
There we go. So, I don't have a whole lot. I'm not going to lie to tell you. I struggled. I say that every time. But, my life really has been hectic the past little while. And I am a terrible procrastinator. And so,
Put those two together.
I did the best I could.
You're a force of nature.
Last week, this week, for you guys, it was a couple weeks ago. I was up until at least midnight every night trying to do this stuff.
Yeah.
After I put the kids to bed.
See, my thing was, I had at work, I had an order of 150 hats, and each hat took 25 minutes. And so, while both Hatley and I was using two machines, so while they're stitching, I'm bored. So
Right.
I was just writing episodes. I even thought about banking a few, doing some
smart.
research on a few.
That would be smart.
Because I've got so much stuff saved on my phone that I want to talk about on the podcast.
Right. Well, so let's get into it. We're going to talk to you guys about a couple of these. I have two.
I have 6.
The first one that I chose is called Byberry Mental Hospital in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. This facility was first opened as a working farm for the mentally ill in 1907. It later got converted into a full mental hospital. It was opened as a city institution in Northeast Philly to help relieve overcrowding at Blockley, which was a huge institution in West Philly. The population for this facility exploded, and by 1914 it housed 2,267 residents, which led to a very small patient-to-doctor-nurse ratio. They actually started hiring in staff. Basically, if you were in need of employment, then you had a job at Byberry.
No background check?
No matter what your qualifications.
I mean, honestly, though, that's kind of a trend.
Yeah.
We'll see that is par for the course.
Close to 3,000 people who used the religion card to get out of going into World War II were actually sent to work at mental health facilities around the country. In fact, in 1934, a national survey of institutional care of the mentally ill reported that Byberry was rated for a capacity of 2,500, but at that point was housing over 4,500.
Ooh.
Sorry. This, of course, would lead to severe cases of patient abuse and neglect. The hospital was very underfunded, and that led to disrepair and poor conditions in the facility. Patients were surviving with no clothes, minimal food, and sewage-filled areas, including their rooms. In fact, Byberry was among the worst in Pennsylvania due to the conditions. In 1948, a book by Albert I. Deutsch, it's not Deitch, it's Deutsch, called The Shame of the States. Byberry was compared equal to the notorious London home of the mad in the previous century, Bedlam, and was also, in his words, akin to the Nazi concentration camps. Like most other facilities in their time, patients were locked in padded cells, solitary confinement. They were beaten, made to endure electric shock treatments, restrained with devices, and underwent lobotomies. In 1946, Life magazine described it, stating, "Thousands spent their days, often for weeks at a stretch, locked in devices called restraints, which were thick leather cuffs." Hold on, I can't read my own stuff. They were thick leather handcuffs, great canvas camisoles, muffs and mitts and wristlets, locks and straps, and restraining sheets. Hundreds are confined in lodges, which are bare, bedless rooms reeking with filth and feces. By day, it's lit only through half-inch holes in steel-plated windows. By night, merely black tombs in which the cries of the insane echo unheard from the peeling plaster of the walls. One 27-year-old by the name of William was left in restraints for possibly as long as 3 years.
Wow.
By the late 1980s, Byberry was still tagged as a clinical management nightmare. Even though census had fallen to about 500 by 1987, the doors were finally permanently shut after a thorough investigation took place in 1990 that revealed the inhumane living conditions. But even after the doors were shut, the horror stories continued. The vacant building became a shelter for gangs, thieves, satanic cults, and former visitors seeking shelter. So, like, basically, and I saw a lot of this in some of the stories that I was researching. Even after they would shut the doors, they would just turn some of these residents loose. Yeah. And they wouldn't know where to go, what to do. And so they would just go back and just try and survive there. Rumor has it, though, one of the former patients, who was brutally violent, lives in the miles of catacombs beneath the building, waiting with a large knife to cut the throats of any of the nosy trespassers. It's also noted that you can still hear and see the former patients that died there. You can see them wandering into and out of the woods surrounding the campus.
That's gotta be scary.
Right. Reports state that you can hear human-like growling and blood-curdling screams echoing around the area, and visitors have gained physical scratches while touring the facility.
No, ma'am.
Right. My next one, which I was super excited because Brittany got her section of this written before I did. And she pointed out that she left this one for me, and I was like, super excited. I saved
this one just for you.
I was so excited because I've always been very interested in this place. Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Kentucky. I don't know why my brain thought it was in Indiana, but it's most definitely in Kentucky.
Yeah, and it's not, it's like an hour or two drive?
Yeah, it's not far from us at all. Yeah. But she and I discussed this earlier. I looked at the prices to go tour it. There's some tours that aren't terrible, but it's still expensive. Yeah. It is so expensive.
I've had a friend that's gone.
I feel like one of TJ's aunts went. I could be wrong, though. But anyway, Waverly Hills, this stands as one of my top 10 places, like haunted places, that I want to go tour. Believe it or not, Waverly Hills began as a family home in the late 1800s. It was purchased by Mayor Thomas H. Hayes in 1883. He intended the beautiful place to be his home. However, the existing schools were so far away, he decided to establish a one-room schoolhouse for his children to attend while they lived there. He hired in Miss Lizzie Lee Harris to teach. Due to her fondness of the author Walter Scott and his Waverly novels, she got permission from Hayes to name the schoolhouse the Waverly School, and he soon renamed the property Waverly Hill. It wasn't until 1908 when its transition began, and it was reopened in 1910, changing its title to hospital. This property was chosen as it was distant from the city and had very picturesque, tranquil views, and it was higher in altitude, allowing for increased airflow, because at that time I think there was like a outbreak of
tuberculosis.
Yes. The name Waverly was upheld because it sounded so peaceful. It was designed to safely accommodate between 40 and 50 tuberculosis patients. It soon expanded in 1926 to be able to support at least 400 patients once tuberculosis turned into an epidemic, and was considered to be one of the best facilities at the time. This place was so secluded, in fact, that it was built to be a self-sufficient community. It had its very own zip code, post office, laundry, maintenance garage, butchery, and farmland. The doctors and staff employed there not only worked there, but they lived there because they weren't allowed to leave the grounds. Mainly because of the tuberculosis issue.
Yeah. I think this is also a theme.
Yes. Treatment for the disease, for tuberculosis, was sometimes as bad as the disease itself. Some experiments were conducted to cure this. Seemed quite barbaric. Honestly, it was thought that sunlight or UV light and fresh air could cure it. So patients were often taken outside, no matter what the weather was. There's pictures that show patients lounging in chairs outside, covered in snow.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I included that in the pictures that I sent. Other treatments that were much worse than that include balloons that would be surgically implanted into the lungs and filled with air to expand them. Muscles and ribs were removed from a patient's chest to allow the lungs to expand further and let more oxygen in. This facility was closed down as a hospital in 1961 once an antibiotic was found as the cure for tuberculosis. And then it was renovated so that it could reopen the following year as a nursing home. Woodhaven Geriatric Center primarily treated aging patients with various stages of dementia and mobility limitations, as well as the severely mentally handicapped. It was closed in 1981 by the state of Kentucky, after an inspection of the grand jury found several cases of patient abuse and degrading state of the facility. The following year, most of the land where the buildings sat were auctioned off. The main hospital building and several remaining facilities, as well as 40 acres, were purchased by developer J. Clifford Todd. He planned to turn it into a minimum security prison for the state. The plan was quickly dropped after a massive protest from the surrounding area. Another failed plan of his was turning the buildings into apartments. This fell through because of lack of funding. In March of 1996, so as early as 1996, which to me seems like 5 years ago.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's like, less than 10 years ago.
Right. Waverly Hills was purchased again by Robert Alberhasky. He intended to build the world's tallest statue of Jesus, so like he was like the one in Rio, as well as an arts and worship center. This plan also fell through because of lack of funding, because he was only able to raise $3,000 of the $8 million that he needed, or more.
Oh, that's a kick in the pants,
right? To carry out his two-phase plan. After this remained in a state of abandonment. After this, it remained in a state of abandonment until it was purchased in 2001 by Charlie and Tina Mattingly, who 2 years later founded the Waverly Hills Historical Society. This group has worked in the following years to renovate the property. Now, Waverly Hills Sanatorium is known as one of the most spiritually active places in the world, boasting new paranormal reports daily.
I can believe it.
The place got a reputation following a story in 2001 in the Courier Journal. A reporter by the name of Thomas Nord described the name of the facility as like something out of a comic book, a place where the Joker might hide out from Batman. In one area of the campus known as the Death Tunnel, and I refer to the Death Tunnel, and I remember the episode of Ghost Adventures when they went there, and I remember them walking through it, and it just gave me the heebie-jeebies the whole time.
It's the one that leads to the morgue, right? Yeah.
This is a 600-foot, basically, body chute.
Yeah.
Where the bodies of the deceased were disposed of. However, people have reported sightings of orbs and balls of lights and spirits. Room 502 is a notorious room in the rooftop chambers where it's believed that tuberculosis patients with mental illness were housed, as well as the site of a story where a nurse hung herself by a light bulb wire when she found out that she was pregnant out of wedlock. The baby daddy was none other than the owner of the sanatorium at the time.
Oh, shit.
But I did find in another article that story may not be true because those wires for the light bulbs weren't real sturdy enough for her to hang herself, for one.
Yeah.
And two, that area was not where they kept the mentally ill.
Okay.
A lot of the times the nurses, that's where the nurses would hang out.
Okay.
Another story states that another nurse who worked in this room jumped from the roof patio and plunged to her death. I have read that there have been sightings of a little girl running up and down the third floor solarium. A little boy seen with a leather ball. No, thank you. We've established. I don't mess with little kid ghosts. A hearse that appears in the back of the building dropping off coffins. A ghost hearse. A ghost hearse?
No.
A woman with bleeding wrists begging for help.
Gosh.
I saw that and I was like, that's a little far-fetched. And I was like, wait, there were mentally ill people here.
Yeah.
So it's a very real possibility.
Yeah.
Visitors have reported slamming doors, lights and windows as if the power was still running in the building. Legend has it that a man in a white coat walks through the kitchen and you can still smell food cooking.
Oh.
Even in the cafeteria, you can hear footsteps, doors that swing open and shut on their own, and you can smell fresh baked bread. Hold on. I lost my spot. See, listen, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Volunteers who have worked on the restoration have reported sounds, unexplained lights, objects being thrown at them, being hit by an invisible entity. I'd be like, no, I'm volunteering my time. I'm done. I'm done.
I was here to be nice. And
right. You're just
messing with me.
Right.
I'm going. I'm going to leave.
I found a website where the writer on that website described a visit that she had there. I think she had a friend that worked or volunteered or whatever. This person stated, I don't know if it's female or male, they stated that they were taken to the 4th floor, which is normally off limits because the floor had sections that had fallen in. They said that big heavy doors were slamming shut in the areas that were unreachable due to the floors. They witnessed a silhouette of a man, again wearing a long white coat. So one could conclude that it could have been like a doctor. It was very distinct to this person. She said, or they said, that it was, you know, they could very distinctly see this person walking, cross a doorway, passed into the hall, and then vanished into a room. They went into said room, and there was nowhere for this person to go.
Oh, that's creepy.
So there was, I mean, there's a lot on this place, but I couldn't find quite as much as I wanted to.
Yeah.
More first-hand accounts. You know, there wasn't a whole lot of that, and it was a lot of it was just repeating the same things over and over. But that's all I got.
Well, strap in, because I have 6. I'm going to start with I think that's just Tool Hospital. Or Tuele.
Hold on. Let's do how to pronounce.
It's Tooele.
Is it in Utah?
Yes.
Oh, we are both wrong.
Oh shit. What is it?
It might help if I turn my volume up. I turned it down so that y'all couldn't hear my ESPN notifications. Because roll tide, be sucking. Tooele.
Okay. So originally built in 1897, Old Tooele Hospital was also a family home. But in 1913, it was converted into what was known as the country poorhouse, where the elderly and those who had special needs were taken care of. In 1953, it became the Old Tooele Hospital and featured improved accommodations for patients, personal and individual bathrooms, and a dedicated morgue. The hospital is also well known because it was where Stephen King's The Stand was filmed. The hospital closed in 2001, but half of the hospital still operates as a nursing home with about 59 retired residents. The other half has been turned into a haunted house attraction called Asylum 49. There have been many reports of paranormal activity over the years. An Alzheimer patient known as Wes is said to haunt the room where he was admitted when he was alive. There have also been sightings of a young child, as well as the original owner who built the home in 1897, Samuel F. Lee, and he is sometimes said to be accompanied by his son, Thomas. One chilling report at the hospital was the sound of a child's voice saying, "Daddy, shot. Sorry."
What?
If this isn't creepy enough, the Utah Ghost Organization claims that these words come from the ghost of a child who was accidentally shot by his father.
Nope.
Other reports include shadowy figures, mists, apparitions, orbs, and a spiritual portal. The names of other spirits that have been identified are Peter, Ned, Richard, James, and a child named Jessica. The Old Tooele Hospital was also featured on an episode of Ghost Adventures, which is also a theme.
I got chills.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand why my reaction to, like, kid ghosts...
It's creepy.
Makes me want to throw up every time I gag. That's
the most tame story I think I have.
Strap in, listeners, because I'm going to react a lot then. I'm sorry.
Alton Mental Health Hospital in Illinois. It was built in the early 1900s, and this hospital garnered a reputation for the harsh mistreatment of its patients, many who were subjected to electroshock therapy, lobotomies, and cold water treatments. These treatments were standard practice at that point in our history.
What's cold water treatment? So basically just like a cold water bath?
An ice bath.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And they would be left in there for a while. Yeah. This facility is still open and functioning today, and many people, including staff, patients, and visitors, have reported hearing unusual noises such as undecipherable whisperings. It has also been reported that doors will randomly slam shut on their own. There was a nurse who reported that she heard someone ask, "Who's that?" To which she turned around to respond to and found that no one was there, and no one else had been in the building at that time.
No.
I mean, I wouldn't want to be in the building by myself,
Right.
if I'm being honest. But later that same day, a different nurse reported experiencing the same thing. Other people have reported feeling like they have been touched. And since this hospital remains in operation, tours are strictly forbidden. However, some people have taken photos on site while they're visiting patients and have reported to have caught images of orbs with the pained face of a male on the front of it. And I'll post this one too. It's creepy. Any ghost investigators that have managed to visit are told by spirits to get out and report being pushed out of rooms. And then, whenever we do like the spooky Illinois, whenever we get to that, I definitely want to touch on the whole town of Alton, because it seems to be ooky spooky, the whole town. Let me get a sip of water. Next, I have Danvers State Lunatic Asylum in Massachusetts. Built in 1878 on a site that was originally Salem Village, the first actual location of the Salem witch trials in 1692.
They set themselves up for failure there.
Yeah. When it was first opened, Danvers was renowned for its modern treatments and excellent patient care. But it wasn't long before the asylum fell victim to lack of funding, overstaffing, and overpopulation, which caused the once excellent conditions to deteriorate into something that was more like a concentration camp. Between 1940 and 1950, the facility housed more than 2,000 patients in a building that was designed to house 600. Patients began to become haggard and ghostly and were often left in complete isolation for days on end. Things got so bad that dead patients would go unnoticed for days, if not weeks. Patients would walk the halls naked, would have to live in their own filth from a lack of basic hygiene being available to them, and many people would experience a worsening of symptoms, if you can imagine. Shock therapy and straitjackets were the norm. Electroshock therapy scared patients, and when patients would misbehave, they were placed in straitjackets and left uncared for indefinitely. The shock therapy failed to control the population, and that's when the lobotomies began. By 1939, the population of the hospital swelled to 2,360, and a total of 278 people died in the hospital that same year. Experts in neurology often defer to Danvers as the birthplace of the prefrontal lobotomy, and visitors to the hospital during these years reported that lobotomy patients would just wander around aimlessly, staring blankly, and being totally unaware of who they were or what they were. They were simply just existing in a haze and were unable to leave. During the 1980s, there were reports out of the hospital about missing teenage patients. One report states that upwards of 115 patients had disappeared within a time frame of 3 months.
Good God.
The hospital never spoke about this publicly, and when staff were questioned about where the patients were going, the only answer was these patients had been assigned to a new doctor.
Oh.
The missing patients were never found, and it continues to remain a mystery. No bodies were ever recovered, and the staff at Danvers remained closed-mouthed right through the closure of the hospital. In 1992, Danvers State Lunatic Asylum was shut down, demolished, and renovated into apartments, which continue to stand today. The only remnants of the horrors that occurred are 2 cemeteries filled with 770 bodies. Some of the headstones only have numbers instead of names. And even in death, administrators did not dignify their patients. Despite the building being torn down and reconstructed, with such sadness, abuse, neglect, and trauma occurring there, it surely stained the land. Residents and visitors have recorded full-body apparitions, flickering lights, the sound of unexplained footsteps, and doors that open and close on their own. Other reports include hearing screaming, banging, and crying. Both of the cemeteries are hotbeds of paranormal activity, with apparitions being common occurrences and disembodied voices being the only sounds heard. Some visitors also reported seeing grayish mists moving slowly around, following people who come to the site. It is entirely possible that these are the spirits of the lobotomized patients who lost their lives at the Danvers State Lunatic Asylum. That's just my first sad one. It's tough.
Yeah.
Next, I have the Ridges in Athens, Ohio. The Ridges first opened its doors in 1868 as the Athens Lunatic Asylum, which had a monstrous campus that stretched more than 800 feet long. Unlike, I don't know if that's accurate, because that feels small. Right. But it's probably pretty long. Unlike Danvers, which had one single central tower, the Ridges had dual towers of the administration building, and it had the profile similar to Notre Dame. The grounds of the Ridges boasted decorative lakes and fields, as well as gardens, orchards, and eventually a dairy barn, all of which were tended to by the inmates. This was an effort to make the facility entirely self-sufficient. And at one point, it even had an alligator which lived in a fountain during the summer months.
Okay, because that's safe.
Right. The asylum was originally meant to house just over 500 patients and was a calm and pleasant place where patients could relax and get better. But it wasn't long before it became an overcrowded institution that relied on the cruel practices of electroshock therapies, ice water baths, and ice pick lobotomies. By the 1970s, it was underfunded and ill-managed. Many of the inmates were poorly accounted for, and large parts of this facility were boarded up or simply just not in use. But there was a ghost story so convincing that it ended up in the Journal of Forensic Sciences, and that is the ghost of Margaret Schilling. Margaret was a patient of the Ridges Continued Care Unit, and at the age of 53, she had general freedom to move about and had no serious behavioral problems. On December 1st, 1978, she failed to show up for dinner, and there was no sign of her anywhere. Within hours, an extensive search was launched with staff crisscrossing the wards searching for her, but they did not find her that night, which was worrisome since the brutally cold winter weather had set in. It wasn't until January 11th, 1979 that workers found Margaret's body in the attic of an abandoned wing of the hospital. There was no sign of foul play. It appeared as though Margaret took off her clothes, folded them neatly beside her, and laid down to die on the cold floor. No one could say how long she'd been dead, but even with the cold winter, the attic had been quite warm, and this allowed for significant decay. She left behind no clues as to how or why she had ended up there or what led to her death, but she did leave behind a gruesome mystery. When workers removed her decomposing body from the concrete floor, they discovered a stain in the shape of Margaret's body. It was ghostly, chalky white, ringed by a fainter, darker outline, and despite the exhaustive efforts of the workers to clean the floor, the stain would not come off. The stain of Margaret Schilling remains to this day, and over the years it has been the source of many ghost tales and rumors about the hospital. But it seems that her manifestation may not be all that paranormal. A forensic team investigated the stain in 2007 and determined that the image was just likely a result of the process of adipocere. And during this process, the breakdown during decomposition of the body's fat turns into basically soap.
Ew.
And the investigators found a waxy residue on the floor that had altered the chemistry of the concrete itself, which left it lighter than the surrounding area.
Think about that next time you use soap in the shower.
Right. Usually this process requires moist, enclosed conditions, and the forensic team's best guess was that this is what Margaret's corpse had undergone despite the conditions of the attic, which it was warm, it was dry.
Yeah.
But more disturbing than any ghost tale is that Margaret was placed in the facility's care, was left to rot on this floor where her body imprinted on the cold concrete. Other patients without family were buried anonymously at the burial site of the facility, which is reported to be very haunted. As we have come to learn, it was a common practice for gravestones to display numbers rather than names, and this resulted in a mass of unknown and unrecorded graves. And investigators who have been brave enough to explore the cemetery have reported a huge number of ghost sightings and heard unexplained screaming in the dead of night. How are we doing?
What do you mean, how we doing?
Doing good?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
listening to you. I'm reading along with you and watching the ballgame.
Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in West Virginia. Constructed between 1858 and 1881, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum ranks high on the list of scariest asylums in the world. Originally designed to house up to 250 patients, it reached its peak in the 1950s when more than 2,400 people were crammed into the facility. The list of reasons for being committed to the asylum were seemingly never-ending and sometimes incredibly trivial, such as falling from a horse, or laziness, or imaginary female trouble, or desertion by husband. Even serious cases such as murder and PTSD. This broadness resulted in all different types of patients being cooped up together, with mostly disastrous consequences. Incidents that occurred included fires being set, attempted hangings, which led to a murder with a bed frame, and one nurse went missing and was later found dead at the bottom of an unused set of stairs. After the terrible conditions became more well known, it did not take long before the asylum closed in 1994. During the time that the facility was active, patients were given a variety of terrible treatments, including shock therapy, solitary confinement, lobotomies, and much more. With the number of people who died in the asylum, it is no surprise that the building and its grounds are believed to be haunted. With some people have reported seeing balls of light, ghostly figures, moving toys, and the list goes on and on and on. After the asylum closed, it was bought and repurposed for tours, including history and heritage tours and ghost tours. The staff who work there claim that ghosts still roam the halls, with the manager stating that she once saw 40 doors slam shut simultaneously.
That's very specific.
Yeah.
40 doors.
Visitors have also witnessed a ghost boy standing in the corner of a room. There have also been reports of whispering, possibly from former patients, as well as unusual smells, the sound of squeaking gurneys, and screaming coming from the room where the shock therapy was performed. Do I only have one more left? I think so. It's quite a long one. So, my last one is Penhurst Asylum. The building opened in 1908 as a state school for the physically and mentally disabled, and it covered 120 acres and housed more than 10,000 patients at any given time.
That's a big gap. 10 and 10,000?
Yeah. The facility was often accused of dehumanization and was reported to provide no help for the mentally challenged before being shut down in 1986 after several allegations of abuse by residents. There is a strong history of Pennhurst being riddled with very strong accusations of neglect, abuse, and torture, mixed with tales of mental patients being chained to the walls and children being kept in cribs for years, and even a few murders. When Pennhurst was shut down, the buildings were abandoned as they were, with patients' belongings strewn about and medical equipment left behind. In the mid-1960s, reporter Bill Baldini ran a 5-episode expose of the Pennhurst State School and Hospital. His series painted a picture of neglect and abuse in the institution that was hard for the regular viewers to even stomach. I've seen bits and pieces of this, and it's not good. On the monochrome televisions of the time came images of full-grown hands and feet being bound by straps to adult-sized cribs. Inmates were shown rocking, pacing, and twitching. Many were severely mentally or physically disabled, but other patients were coherent but withdrawn. The 5-minute news segments were entitled, "Suffer the Little Children."
Oh.
When one patient was asked by the interviewer what he would like most in the world, to have anything he could have wanted, the sad and withdrawn reply was simply, to get out of Pennhurst. Described as being one of the most chilling scenes of the 30-minute documentary was one of the hospital's physicians describing how he dealt with a particularly vicious bully who had brutalized one of his other inmates.
Can I just say, I don't like that they refer to these patients as inmates.
Yeah.
They did nothing, well, most of them did nothing wrong.
Right. He described how he had asked one of his colleagues which injection he could use to cause the most discomfort to a patient without permanently injuring him. Then he proceeded to administer that injection to the bully. The state-funded school and hospital was at the heart of the human rights movement that revolutionized this country's approach to health care for the mentally and physically handicapped. The papers labeled Pennhurst as the shame of Pennsylvania. As you can imagine, it was inevitable that the hospital would close, but it took 2 decades of legal actions, federal judgments made and overturned, and growing financial issues for the place to finally be shut down. Today, the property is in the hands of private owners who have put themselves and the property in the center of a controversy. One of the modern functions it serves is as a haunted house attraction, which has generated some concern as it is being viewed as deeply disrespectful to those who suffered the brutality that once took place there.
I mean, I get the hype behind that and why somebody would think that that's a good idea.
Yeah.
In theory, yes, but morally?
Yeah, it's a bit... the current owners are working to repair the damage since its closing, and the son of the facility's owner, Timothy Smith, expressed a desire to restore the better portion of the property with the goal of creating a museum and having a historical tour that would be open to the public. It should be no surprise that with there being such a history of human suffering, violence, and death, that Pennhurst has its fair share of ghost stories. In addition to overseeing restoration projects and the haunted house attraction during the Halloween season, Timothy Smith is also president and CEO of the Pennhurst Paranormal Association. The organization uses the tagline, "They lived here, died here, and are still here." They plan to open the former hospital to the public for ghost tours on the campus. Timothy believes that the public's curiosity about Pennhurst's ghosts has the potential to make it a very profitable paranormal property. Ghost Adventures have already filmed an episode here, as well as Ghost Hunters, which is my favorite. The official paranormal researchers for Pennhurst are Shore Paranormal Research Society, or SPRS. And they have found the property to be rife with activity after conducting several large-scale investigations. They have recorded EVPs of disembodied voices uttering things like, "Go away," "I'll kill you," "We're upset," and "Why'd you come here?" In one recording, an unknown male says, "I'm scared," followed by a female voice asking, "Why won't you leave?" The group reported numerous shadows manifesting and then dissipating at will in the Quaker building. These shadows included what appeared to be a small female child with long black hair, as well as a hunched-over presence with long dangling arms and the upper portion of bodies looking over or around obstacles. They reported doors and even a rocking chair moving without anyone being near them. An investigator was shoved from behind hard enough on a stairway that a deep red mark was left on the small of his back. Another investigator was scratched on the arm but was not near any object or wall. They also reported objects being propelled in the basement, such as a pry bar, a brass fixture, and other unknown objects. In the Limerick building, the apparition of a woman in a vintage nurse's uniform was observed by a firefighter, a police officer, and a Marine. There were multiple shadow people witnessed, and some investigators were touched in the Mayflower building. The Philadelphia building had loud noises and voices heard from the outside of the building, and the investigators surrounded the building and entered via the tunnel system. They were unable to locate anyone in the building, and it was impossible for someone to have fled without running into one of the investigators. This is kind of a sad episode, I'm not gonna lie.
Yes.
But it points to the mental health history of our country.
Right.
And where it began.
Right. Man.
Because honestly now, if it was still like that, I'd be in a facility for sure.
For sure. Yeah, and I mean the things that people got put into the facilities for is what got me. It's not just people who honestly need the help. It's people that there was a point in time that if you were gay, that was seen as mental illness and you were put into an institution.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's why those people hit it.
Yeah.
I don't know why Uncle Charlie and his friend James lived together.
Right.
But they've lived together for 50 years now.
Right.
And then when they die, everybody's like, "Oh, they were lovers."
Yeah. And I mean, people with Down syndrome.
Oh,
they're
God.
There's nothing about a Down syndrome person that technically needs institutionalized.
Yeah.
There's and I've said it before and I'll say it again a million times, there's nothing down about a person with Down syndrome.
Right. They seem like the happiest.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, I mean, it's a dark stain on our history, I think. But I've seen clips of that expose, and it's mind-boggling how comfortable the doctors and nurses are walking around and kind of being interviewed by this guy while there's patients on the floor covered in their own feces. Right. And it's you don't see the problem with this?
I think that honestly, the people who worked in these facilities, these nurses and doctors, I'm not going to say all, but a majority of them they may have entered that position as a kind-hearted person.
Innocently.
And then they witnessed so much in such a small time frame that they became jaded to where this was just normal and they didn't care anymore. Yeah. But at some point, I believe that these people deserve to be institutionalized themselves.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
they're sick.
Yeah.
The ones who promoted the abuse and all that.
Yeah,
I'll
and
say
like,
that. Let me specify.
it's just still just like watching that doctor like walk around, like I can see it in my head, and just be like, oh yeah, like I injected him with something that would hurt him, but not permanently.
Right.
I don't know. The comfort level was just
right
through the roof.
Oh.
I know that there's also, I'll have to figure out which one it was, but there was a lady, it was like in the early 1900s, I think, and she wrote for a newspaper, and she like went undercover as a patient at a mental health facility, and like was able to get out and write about this mental health facility.
I feel like I've heard about that.
And like how absolutely just horrible it was.
It reminds me of that movie. Oh, was it Girl Interrupted? No, that's not right. Was it?
I don't know. I've never seen that.
Was that? Hold on. I don't think that's right. Movie about women and
Nellie Bly was her name. And
I was right. It is Girl Interrupted with Angelina Jolie.
She became a star journalist by going undercover as a patient at a New York City mental health asylum in 1887 and exposing its terrible conditions in
This movie is about that.
Is it?
Yeah. Well, maybe not. No.
Let me see what this is from the National Women's
No, it's not. I'm wrong.
History Museum. Let me see. I'm just looking for where her little bios talks about her. Okay. So she was challenged by her editor, Joseph Pulitzer, to investigate one of New York's most notorious mental asylums, Blackwell's Island. Bly not only accepted the challenge, but she decided to feign mental illness to gain admission and expose firsthand how patients were treated. With her courageous and bold act, she cemented her legacy as one of the most notable journalists in history. Bly's 6-part series on her experience in the asylum was called 10 Days in the Madhouse, and quickly made Bly one of the most famous journalists in the country. Her reporting on life in the asylum shocked the public and led to increased funding to improve conditions in the institution. Furthermore, her hands-on approach to reporting developed into a practice now called investigative journalism. And she continued to produce regular exposés in the state of New York. So yeah, that was
the movie that I was talking about. It's got Angelina Jolie, it's got Winona Ryder and Brittany Murphy in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's I've watched it like years ago. I haven't seen it in forever. It's a good movie. You should watch it for sure. But it's like they put Winona Ryder's character in because they think, she's got BPD. She's got bipolar.
Mm-hmm.
Or borderline personality, not bipolar. But it's like some of they do show that, the people that she ends up in a group with have issues that require some type of treatment.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the girls is she's a pathological liar. That's all.
This is Girl Interrupted, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
But she's a pathological. What? Just because you're a liar, I don't understand why that makes it to a point where you have to be institutionalized. For one, for two, there's another one where the girl is like she'll only eat chicken from her father's place.
That's weird.
She doesn't want people to go in her room, and she only wants to eat the chicken that her father makes. I
don't know. Maybe I'll have to watch that movie.
It is really good. But, alright, I have the nonprofit. this week. I tried to search. I wanted to do something that was on theme.
It's early and you're still hearing me yawn.
Right. When you search nonprofits for mental health, you get a lot of depression and things like that, which I'm here for helping out with that, but that's not what I was looking for.
Yeah.
It was like finding a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
So I found this place. It's called Schizophrenia and Psychosis Action Alliance. Basically creating a movement for systemic change to improve care, support, and equity for millions of people living with schizophrenia and psychosis spectrum disorders. Schizophrenia is a treatable brain disease and should be treated like any other neurological illness. Yet we treat people with schizophrenia as if they don't deserve to be part of our healthcare system. Schizophrenia, people with schizophrenia do deserve, the right to have effective medicines, social support, housing, and recognition that they are people. Mm-hmm. But it's a pretty cool little thing to kind of look into. There it says that their vision is to see schizophrenia and psychosis spectrum disorders universally recognized and treated as neurobiological brain illnesses, and it's basically it's all about trying to get them to be recognized as a part of society.
Yeah.
They're not weird.
Right. Well, it's like, there's this guy who has a YouTube channel, and let me see what it's called. It's Special Books by Special Kids. And he used to be a special needs teacher, in the special education arena. Yeah. And that's how he got his start. And he would interview his students and stuff. And but now he travels. I think he's international now, but he travels and interviews all different types of people with all different types of disabilities, and as well as their families.
Oh, is that he's blonde-headed?
Yeah.
Yes, I've seen his videos. I love his videos.
He did one,
There's one where this person is nonverbal, and she was just gaga over him, just oogling over, and was just so sweet. Kept laying her head over on his shoulder. He is the sweetest. I've watched several of his videos.
But the reason why I even brought it up, he did a video in 2017 with a lady named Cecilia who has schizophrenia and autism. And then he re-interviewed her in 2022, and she does all these talks, and what he's doing is normalizing these types of disabilities in society, because they're not taboo.
No. And he does a good job of showing that they are people too. Yes. They have the same interests and wants and needs as anybody else.
Yeah, it helps the viewer connect with them.
Let's link his YouTube. I'll
remind me.
What was his name?
The channel name is Special Books by Special Kids.
Got it.
And his name is Chris. But yeah, so that goes along with your nonprofit.
I like it. Well, we appreciate you guys coming for another week.
Who are we telling this week?
We are telling
your counselor or your therapist.
My
therapist doesn't know I do this.
They may listen to a couple episodes of our podcast and say they are the reason you need therapy.
Yeah.
But, they may be weird too. So
you never know. You just never know.
They may be a wanderer.
That's true.
So, share it with your therapist or counselor. Send us spooky stories. Specify the state that they're in.
Yeah.
Give us topics. Episode
give us
topics.
ideas of like what you want us to talk about. Like, I know what I like and what I would like to hear about,
But you may not like that.
Yeah. So if there's something, or if there's like a specific something that's like an urban legend or whatever that you want us to talk about.
I love a good urban legend.
Yeah, it's on my list. My like
Love
short
a good
list
urban
of.
legend.
I say short. It's like 3 pages now.
But follow us on the socials, things like TikTok,
Instagram.
Twitter.
It's not Twitter anymore. You gotta say
X.
Facebook.
Email us at wondersofweird
At gmail.com. Sorry, you're gonna have to hear that for the next
at least the next
2 episodes, 2 or 3 episodes.
we may remember it the next time we record too, and you might get it then too. So strap in.
I think we should end on that. Just both of us go.
All right, guys, thanks for coming. Be a good human.
Yeah, be a good human.
Okay, bye.
Bye.